Alexander Niebuhr, a German convert to Mormonism, wrote in his journal of hearing Joseph relate the vision in May 1844, just a month before Joseph's death.
Alexander Niebuhr, in his account, which he tells of Joseph Smith just before Joseph died, talked to a small group of people about his first vision. And there he says, Joseph Smith wanted to feel and shout like the rest. He was talking about the revivals they attended to, but he couldn't do it. And that just gives you a little bit more insight into the things that were going on in Joseph Smith's mind.
All of Joseph's and the hearsay accounts have been published again recently, together with scholarly analysis by my mentors in the first 2 chapters of the book, Opening the Heavens, Accounts of Divine Manifestations.
Joseph's several accounts tell a consistent story of teenage angst followed by a comforting heavenly vision, a theophany. It is a fact, however, that the several accounts vary in points of emphasis and disagree on some details.
In 1832, Joseph declared that the Lord opened the heavens upon me, and I saw the Lord, perhaps referring to 2 separate heavenly beings, each as the Lord, but not explicitly describing 2 personages, as his later accounts declare. His 1835 account says he saw 1 personage, then another, as well as many angels. In one account, Joseph called the experience his first visitation of angels. In another, he said he saw 2 glorious personages. Joseph's 1835 and 1838 accounts emphasize opposition from an unseen power. The other accounts do not mention that part of the experience. In the 1832 account, Joseph's scribe Frederick Williams inserted a clause saying that Joseph was 16 when the vision came, whereas his 1835, 1842, and the 1843 hearsay account all say about 14, and his 1838 account says, in my 15th year, or 14.
Those are the objective facts. Interpretations of them vary among subjective interpreters. It is imperative that seekers learn to discern the difference between historical facts and interpretations, opinions, and assumptions.
People are worried because one of the first reactions was to stumble on little details. It said Lord in one account, said 2 beings in another. There are quite a few details that differ from one account to another. It's like the Gospels. You cannot get a straight account of Jesus Christ's passion, his crucifixion and so forth, by lining up the Gospels. They all tell it in a slightly different fashion. But that is such a commonplace in recounting events of any kind that it shouldn't be the stumbling block, and I don't think is the most serious matter that's involved.
Those other accounts are pretty well available, and as you go through them, you can see that Joseph Smith wasn't telling it exactly the same each time he related it. And I thought it would be more peculiar if he had related it exactly the same, because it would look like he was contriving something. But where he relied upon his experience and related things a little bit different each time, you could see that there was more to the historical record than we have in that one account. And so I thought it was very important to be able to pull together those accounts and analyze them and make them available to people.
Some people have asked why it's important for us to study all the different accounts of the first vision. Why don't we just take the one that we have in the Pearl of Great Price and let it go at that? And that, of course, is all right. I think that that's a wonderful account, and it's the official account, and when we're telling our story to the world, that's the account we use. But as historians, if we want to know more about Joseph Smith and his inside feelings, if we want to know more about the nature of this young man, if we want to know more about perhaps some of the things that he didn't put in the account that was written in 1838, but told other people, just for whatever edification it might be for us and our understanding, it's important that we study them. Some people originally were disturbed by the fact that the differences might mean that there were inconsistencies. And it is true that there are a couple of inconsistencies.
In all the accounts, there's references to who appeared to him. And in the 1838 account, he emphasized that the Father appeared, said, "Joseph, this is my beloved son, hear him." That was the only account where the Father was actually identified. In one account, he talked about the one personage and then another personage. In one account, he said there are two personages who exactly resembled each other in features and likeness. But only in the 38 account did he actually identify the Father, which is most significant. Then in other accounts, he referred to the fact that he saw the two personages and he saw holy angels. So there's information about who appeared to him in the accounts. Also, by combining the accounts, you learn what he learned. And in all the accounts, there's information about what he learned during the vision that's not found in other accounts. So only by combining the accounts can you have a complete understanding of who appeared, what he learned, and then his aftermath. And only one account does he really talk about in any detail, his aftermath, the great peace that he enjoyed. And also by examining the accounts, you can gain a much better understanding of what he learned about Jesus Christ. In the 32 account, the first account he wrote, he said that the personage who appeared to him, which was Jesus Christ, told him that his sins were forgiven and that Jesus Christ had taken upon himself the sins of mankind. Thus we learn about the atonement of Jesus Christ during the first vision. And in this 32 account, there's also a reference to his second coming, the second coming of the Savior.
In the 1835 account, he mentions this evil power again. He says his tongue was swollen in the roof of his mouth. It reads different from the way it is in 1838 account. And he says he heard the sound of walking. Someone was walking and he sprang to his feet and looked back. And we don't get that in the other account. And I think that as you read these things, you put it together. It was a more involved and more detailed experience than we have in any single account.
There are, of course, a number of differences in the various accounts, but there are two that seem to be contradictions, and I'd like to talk about those two for just a second. One is that in the 1838 account, Joseph Smith says that this vision happened when he was in his 15th year, which meant that he was 14 years old. Whereas in the 1832 account, he said this happened in my 16th year. Now to me, that isn't much of an inconsistency. Surely they're two different things, but I can imagine that in his effort to write that early account, he was really not very much concerned about dating it exactly, as much as he was concerned about getting down on paper the feelings that he had and the reasons why he went to pray and what happened to him in the grove were so much a part of what was going on in his mind that I doubt that he really was concerned about exactly which year it happened. But when he wrote the 1838 account, this was a much more well-prepared account. It was one that he thought through a lot. It was one that he wrote for publication. And so I can see that at that time he would be very much concerned about getting the date as close as he could to an accurate date. And so I accept the 1838 account, but I don't think anyone should have any problem with the fact that there is a year's difference in the account that was given in 1832. The other thing that seems inconsistent to people is the fact that in the 1838 account, he says that in the light he saw two personages, whereas in the 1832 account, he said a personage appeared to me and spoke to him and gave the answers to the questions that he wanted. And so it only specifically mentions one person in the 1832 account and specifically mentions two persons in the 1838 account. If we accept the integrity of Joseph Smith, as I do, in the 1832 account, he puts the emphasis on the person who told him that he was forgiven of his sins, and that would have been the Savior. And that's what happens in the first account. It is interesting that in some of the other accounts, Joseph Smith puts a little different twist on it. For example, in one of the accounts, he said he saw a personage in the light, and then another personage appeared. So he has two personages there, but one comes in right after the other. I don't think those are inconsistencies that we need to worry about in any way, because I think the story itself holds together as a beautiful and wonderful story. And the fact that he would say something a little different to one group of people than he does to another group of people when he's telling the story personally is no different than what you would do if you were telling your story at one time and then telling it again at another time under different circumstances to different people for different reasons. And I think that accounts for it.
You have to read all the accounts, put them together, and recognize that this harmony enables us to gain a much better understanding of this significant event, Joseph Smith's first vision.
Any profound experience is going to come across in a partial manner. Once you get that glimpse of reality, then you're not going to say, well, Joseph told of this in one account and he didn't tell of that in another account. And so you use the accounts as a guide to the total experience and ask how they integrate. The minute you ask that question, they fall into place beautifully.